businesses. And so a shout out to all of our sponsors for providing this service to you, and specifically one of our gold sponsors, Altitude Hospitality, which has opened up the Homestead Collective up in Prominent Point by Powers and Briargate, where culinary meets community. Really awesome place. A renewed venture of Mitch Yellen, who has the Pinery and Trainwreck and Dad's Donuts. They have 7 different food establishments in one place. It's a beautiful space. The food is amazing. It's up there on that northeast side of the city, and I recommend that you check it out. The Homestead Collective. It's where the Pinery North used to be, and again, wonderful place. Check it out. So this is Faith and Family Wednesday. And I'm here, Chaim Goldman, and investigative journalist Jordan Baldwin. We are both Jewish. We are Messianic Jews by our faith, but we are Jewish ethnically. And you know what? It didn't matter. During the Holocaust, you could be a Lutheran clergy, a Lutheran pastor. And if you had Jewish heritage, you were still Jewish. You still went to the camps. So this is an ancient hatred. We see it all the time. It's sad. It's tragic, but here's the deal, because I at the dinner table last night, as I mentioned in the previous segment, I was having this conversation with my family, with my children, going, I guess this is a conversation German families had in the 1930s. Things are getting really bad, and we have to watch ourselves. And this is when my daughter, who I guess had blocked it out, forgotten about it when we were up at this event that Jordan organized for Israel Independence Day a month or so ago, that while she was walking around the Denver Capitol with an Israeli flag draped around her shoulders, someone rode by on a bike and said to my 15-year-old daughter, "You should kill yourself." And we had other people, use the F word. People walked by yelling, free Palestine, just like this person did during the attacks. So what do we do? What can we do? Well, a lot, because we have a lot more power than the Jews had in Germany or anywhere else, and hopefully people are willing to step up, but we don't know, because really in every generation, when it comes down to it, there are some righteous people who are willing to stand with the Jewish people, but most don't, and the church fails, the government fails, everybody fails at this. And I would challenge us now, while we're still the majority, that we stand up, we support the Jewish community, but we also push back against all this hate. We had a program a couple days ago just on this victimization, and we know all of this propaganda that's going on out of Hamas. Even a false report that Israel gunned down a bunch of people over the weekend getting U.S. aid in Gaza turned out not to be true. But you know what? The AP put it out. Washington Post had it. I saw it on sites here in Colorado Springs. It wasn't true. I read it. I was like, I don't think this is true. Well, it took days, but guess what? It's still out there. And when this builds up over time, globalize the Intifada, that there's a genocide going on in there, people get angry at what's not actually going on. But in the end, this is Jew hatred, and it's not obviously about limiting guns, because this man had guns limited. So he made Molotov cocktails. People have used cars. People have used machetes, right? So it doesn't matter. Once the hate is there, it doesn't matter. So Jordan, get a little bit about your background and also what you've experienced as you've gone out there in our community to cover news that people have made anti-Semitic slurs at you.
Yeah, so basically my family is from the Rhine River area, Germany, and my grandmother is a Holocaust camp survivor. A lot of my family was separated during the war. My grandmother ended up marrying an American soldier and moving here, and that's when she had my mother, and now I'm here. So I grew up, hearing a lot from my grandmother, who has passed since. She used to go around to schools and speak. I used to go with her, and she always used to tell me about the rhetoric leading up to everything that happened, and how
Germany.
In Germany, like we talk about the night of broken glass, and just this attitude. And she said, Jordan, it's like people were under a spell. It was spreading like wildfire, this hatred, and it didn't even make any sense. And I feel like that's a lot of what we're seeing today, is this hatred, this spreading like wildfire. A spirit. Yeah, it's evil. So that's my history, and I grew up learning a lot about that. So as this has played out as I got older, it really has hit home with me. And it kind of hits home with me even more when people try to disassociate my ethnicity from the beliefs of my people. And oh, there's Zionism and then there's the Jewish people. But especially with Eastern European Jews, it really does all play in to one thing, and it has nothing to do with these rhetoric-driven statements they make about quote-unquote Zionists.
By the way, one of the reasons that the modern Zionist movement happened, of going back to Israel, wasn't just this spiritual call of 2,000 years and going back to our ancestral lands, but because things were really bad in Europe. Those of us here in America, my family that came over around 1900, I'm sure it had something to do with the pogroms that were going on. So, and there were attacks and murders against Jewish people in what was called Palestine before 1948, murdered before there was a state. So if you really study this, you look at the claim. First of all, the historic claims, even in the Quran, are undeniable, and Muslims who are honest are willing to say that it's the Jewish people's land, Israel, or Greater Israel's land. But the hatred just keeps going up, and it goes beyond any kind of logic. And we have to see that. And that's why people are willing, like this person who did this attack, he sprayed gasoline on himself. He was willing to die while lighting elderly people on fire, claiming it was because they're Zionists. They were trying to get the hostages back. It wasn't even a pro-Israel thing. It was awareness about the Israeli hostages that were over there. But he was willing to die for this and to kill for this, to light 80-something-year-old Jewish women on fire for a hatred. Where in the world does that come from?
Well, I think that it comes from a lot of people in the Middle East. They're brought up to hate Jews when they're from Palestine or particular areas. I had a friend who shared this with me. He was a Palestinian Christian, and he says, my family used to teach me so much about Jews, and they hated Jews, but that's because of their views on Zionism. That's a lot of it and where it comes from. So it's all connected, and I do believe it's all viewed as one thing, but yet people try to separate it. And the Torah teaches the opposite of the hate that these communities are promoting. And that's why we hear this from the river to the sea. It's a chant of no peace. Free Palestine. I mean, what this guy was screaming, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that at these protests we go out to. Every single protest.
Yeah, so talk about how that's manifesting here. It's really within, the college students are romanticizing this and are being pro-terrorist, pro-Hamas. The transgender community that wouldn't last 5 seconds in Gaza, a man dressed as a woman, claiming that, and yet they side with that. You've been called, racial, anti-Semitic slurs, and had people physically come after you. Talk about how you're seeing it manifest within, what we would say, those who are influenced by Marxism here in our local. I mean, we're talking Colorado Springs.
Absolutely. So I do believe that there is this crossover with this Marxism. We could talk about the war against quote-unquote capitalism, or what they call the Zionist entity. And what I've seen is they are viewing America and Israel as one entity, which is the Zionist entity.
And the oppressors.
And the oppressors, correct. And, what we've seen over the past few years at Pikes Peak Pride, this intersectionality I was talking about. The first year I was concerned, they were telling the community to riot for their rights. And when
we say Pikes Peak Pride, we're talking about this convention, outside convention and parade that happens and is happening this June.
Right, correct. So I went to some leaders, and I went to Pikes Peak Pride and spoke with them about that. This past year, they did not march with that message. This was the Democratic Socialists of America who had marched with this message. So this year, the Democratic Socialists of America marched with the message of Queers for Palestine.
That was last year.
That's what they proposed. Yes. Last year
was Queers for Palestine. That was the theme that the Social Democrats wanted to march in the Pride Parade.
Correct. And we got this year's coming up still. So we'll see what they march with this year.
And we found that going down, and we mentioned this, we did whole shows on it, that when we went down to Pikes Peak Pride, and lots of booths, we're wondering, as the culture has shifted under the new federal administration, whether as many corporations are going to be funding this. That's going to be a question, because it's not as hip, it's not as popular now, but we'll see whether they double down on this. But we found down there the Democratic Socialists and the Church of Satan had boots down there, and we're like, why are you part of this? And what we realize is Marxism infuses any movement, so that when you can say, you know, why is socialism good for America? They say, hey, you're a racist, you're a transphobe, or whatever. It's like, no, I want to know politically why, and then eventually they say F you and they tell you to get lost. They have no answers.
Right, like at the Steve Bannon protest that we were covering, they were screaming, "No more Nazis" or something like that, and I was like shaking my head. Yeah, we don't want Nazis. And then they turned it on me because they heard I was a Jewish man, and they started chasing after me, and like they were calling me a Nazi. So how do we get to this point where they're calling Jewish people Nazis? That's where we're at.
And I would just say, lastly, we need to support the Jewish community. As in the last segment, Jeremy Jacobs said, the Jewish community is looking for the non-Jewish community for support, and please step up. But I will say this: so much of the Jewish community is so liberal, and they keep supporting politicians. They support organizations that hate us, that work against us. And so we have to wake up. I'm not saying you have to, change completely, maybe be a moderate, but stop funding the very people that want to destroy us. That is suicide. And so this is also a call to the Jewish people. It's a call to everyone to wake up. Anti-Semitism is here, folks, and this is getting dangerous. Will you remain silent? Will you take action? That's what we'll be talking about in the next segment.
I'm glad you got to bring that up. That's good.
Okay, so we have, I need to know how long is the rant?
2:23.